So welcome to day 2 of our Q&A sessions for Maine Bioscience Day. My name is Agnieszka Carpenter, and I am the Executive Director of BioMaine, and BioMaine is the organizer of Maine Bioscience Day every year. And today we have with us Erin Bouttenot from Northeast Laboratory Services, also known as the mold lady or the mold scientist. I'm sure you watched the video. And so Erin, can you just start by saying who you are and where you work and what your company does? And maybe before we do that, I just wanted to also say that the chat function is on. We have some questions that were sent to us ahead of time, but if you'd like, you can also leave questions in the chat, or anybody can raise their virtual hand and ask a question in person. So, okay, Erin, the mic is yours.
Great. Thank you guys for joining us. So yeah, I definitely am the mold girl, is what they call me on the streets. Basically, what I do is I'm in the name of indoor air quality, whether it's mold, radon, asbestos, all these icky things that can be in our air that we breathe in. That's kind of all in the nature of my job. My lab that I work at is in Westbrook, Maine, so by Portland. And yeah, we have a bunch of different labs here at Northeast Labs. And yeah, I would say that the primarily of my day is definitely hard science of getting to look at things under the microscope, growing all those icky things that you saw in the video. That's my day-to-day job. And people call me with all these weird questions of what's going on in my house or what's going on in my apartment. And they'll call me and we just try to figure it out together, is my day-to-day job.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to start by asking a question that has to do with your career. And so how did you get to where you are? What inspired you? What was your career story? In short.
Yeah, I'll try. So I went to college at St. Joseph's College of Maine in Standish. I walked in knowing I love science, but I couldn't pick one when I was in high school. And so I started off as a chemistry major, and then I sat into Intro Bio 101. So I studied biology. It was one of the requirements, and I fell in love. It was so fascinating to me learning about all these different organisms, plants, humans, fungi, marine biology, all of that kind of fell into that course, and I fell in love. And so I pursued that throughout my college career. I ended up getting 2 majors and 2 minors. So I studied biology, environmental science, a couple other things too. And so when I got out of college, I said, yep, I still just love biology. I can't pick one. And so I actually got an interview on this job just by somebody I knew, sat in, got hired on the spot, and I've worked here ever since just because I've fallen in love with mycology, which is the study of fungi. That's a specific branch of biology. So that's what I do, and I fell in love with it for the 5 years I've worked here.
Great, thank you so much. I do see some questions are coming in. I also have a lot of questions about mold, so we're going to jump into the topic of mold. And the first question is there a type of mold that can kill you on the spot?
So there gets a lot of bad rep to mold. As beautiful as I think it is, everybody's horrified when they hear the word mold. There isn't a mold that's going to kill you as soon as you breathe in, a spore of it, or just breathe it in or touch it. It's not really that hazardous at all unless you are sensitive. So there's some people who have allergies. So during like pollen season, you may have one person who has a really stuffy nose due to a certain type of plant pollen that gets into the air, while the person next to them has no symptoms at all. Every human body is going to react differently when they're exposed to something. They may have no symptoms at all, or they may have something really small or slight, or somebody may have something more severe. But usually they're all pretty similar to just allergy-like symptoms, nothing too hazardous too much.
Okay, thank you. A lot of questions about the fuzziness. Why is it fuzzy? Why is there fuzziness on the mold?
So the why I work under a microscope is because mold itself is actually microscopic. So if you think of those fairy rings where you see those mushrooms in a little circle and you see all the little mushroom caps, those are actually what's called a fruiting body. So think of it like the petals on a flower, but the entire plant itself is kind of the roots, it's the stalk of it. And so what's actually underground is what's called mycelium, and it's basically like tree roots. And so that's actually the true fungus itself, and it's microscopic. What it is it's little ropes, all wound together into something that you can visibly see as a fuzziness. That's basically all these microscopic hairs all linked over together kind of into a rope-like system. And that's the fungus itself. So that's why it looks fuzzy, is because it's all those tiny little hairs poking up and looking nice and soft and fluffy.
Okay, and there's definitely a lot of passion when you talk about mold. So one question here is, how did you find your liking of mold, and why do you like it so much?
I think I really fell in love with it because I learn something new every day. I run into, different colors of things. I actually have some pictures here. It really looks quite stunning. You never quite know what you're going to see. You might see something giant and yellow, or you might see something that kind of looks like a clover, all tiny, tiny under a microscope, and just the things you would never see, in your air. You wouldn't know really that you're breathing these in, but they're actually pretty things that we're breathing into our lungs. And I just loved how pretty they are, and how you never know what you're going to find in the air. One day a big mushroom might grow outside of someone's house, and they collect that sample, and boom, you have this, pretty spore in the sample. So I think it's the excitement of you not know what you're going to find when you put your eyes into the microscope.
Great. So someone asked, can mold be colorful? And I think you just answered that, right? So what kind of colors do you usually see?
Usually I see some usually blues or greens. If you think of when you leave fruit out on your kitchen counter in the kitchen, you might see these big blue spots. Same with like bread, you'll see those like green, blue dots, and that's mold growing on it. That's pretty common that you'll find. But I personally love the purples. It's like this beautiful lilac color you can sometimes see, or yellow dots. So there's a lot of colors it can come into, especially when you grow them on the plates like you saw in the video. They can be a very wide variety in the ways that they look. And some of them can be sticky and gooey, and some of them can be fuzzy and soft.
Okay. What causes mold to grow? That's a question in chat.
So kind of think of mold really similar to a house plant. You give it the soil and you put the plant seed in there, and then you water it. Mold is the same thing. So our homes are basically processed trees, it's paper products. And so that's the soil. And then the mold spore comes and it seeds, it lands on your surface. And then high humidity is what causes it to grow, or a liquid leak. So that's you watering it. So if you have a lot of water and it touches a cold surface, that water is going to condensate, turn into a little bubble of water and land on there, and that waters it. And so usually when you're dealing with mold indoors, what you're really doing is you're managing moisture. So whether it's a leak or a spill or high humidity, that's really what you're trying to do. You're not trying to kill the mold or get rid of it. You're actually trying to solve a water problem.
Okay, great. I see one question here, and I may not know how to pronounce this, but is asbestos a type of mold?
Asbestos is not a type of mold. It's actually something that they used back in the day. It's a fiber that they mined, and they would use it in different products in our building products. And it actually will cause a lung disease if you breathe it in. It's great, a product, because it doesn't catch fire. So people thought it was a great thing to put in our homes. But then they realized that if you breathe it in, you get sick. So now there's a lot of people who would do testing if they buy an old home. They want to make sure there's no asbestos there. So it's technically like a mineral fiber that's used in a lot of buildings.
So it's not biological.
It's not biological. It's something that people will mine.
Okay. Okay, a lot of questions about eating mold. So can you eat mold? why can we eat some types of mold?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, how you can only eat some types of plants. You have people who you can only eat some types of berries, but not all of them. It's just the way that biology is. Just some want people to eat them, and some their mechanism is to not want to be eaten. So that's kind of what mold does, and that's why there's some that you can eat and some that you can't. Mold really can be a very helpful tool in our everyday lives, in terms of just food. People eat mushrooms, those mushroom caps, or you have some people who will, make bread, which come from yeast, which yeast is a type of fungi. So that's a type of mold. So you wouldn't have bread without mold. You wouldn't have delicious cheese because, mold is how you ferment and make cheese. So you wouldn't have a lot of these really tasty products if it wasn't for mold. And same with medicine. Medicine is made with mold for certain types of medicine and vaccines. It comes right from mold. And same with Legos. There's actually a chemical within the component of making Legos. It actually comes from a specific type of mold. So you wouldn't have Legos if it wasn't for mold.
I had no idea about this. I'm going to tell my sons.
Yeah. Be thankful for mold. It may look gross, but it's very helpful.
Okay, so you mentioned you can eat some types, but not others. So if we eat a sandwich, just make ourselves a peanut butter and jelly, and then something tastes weird, and then we see that it has those blue and green spots. Is that harmful? Can we safely eat it?
No, that one you shouldn't eat. That's just a certain type of mold that likes to be on bread or those types of fruit, and those ones aren't good for us to eat. So unless it's properly made, there's certain types, when people make these cheeses or make these breads, they're using a certain type of mold when they're producing the product, which is approved by, the FDA, the people who make sure your food is safe. So those are good to eat. Usually I actually just had a friend of mine accidentally eat a sandwich in that case. And she looked at the other side and it had a giant mold spot. So she called the main toxicology, to make sure that she was safe. And they said, as long as it was a small bite, it's probably okay, monitor how you feel. And usually it's okay, as long as your body can handle it. But sometimes if you're allergic, it might turn into more. But in most cases, just, it's not the best. Wouldn't recommend it. It's not good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, the questions are coming in. I will try to go back to some of them, but I'm seeing, have you ever gotten sick working from mold?
So there's a lot of precautions in the lab that we can use, and that's what we will enact as much as we can. We're supposed to, or it's a lot of times it's regulated. So what there is there's kind of this glass box, and what it does is it filters the air. So it'll vacuum all of the air in which I work in. So my hands are inside of the box, but I'm outside of the box. So both me and the sample are kept separated. And so I'm not breathing in anything I work with. So I stay safe. The sample stays clean. So that's generally where I do most of that work. And that's kind of that in the video, you'll see where I have those cultures and I put them inside the plates with the colorful mold growing on them. That's me working inside of that box. So that protects me and the sample.
Thank you. Yeah, that glass box, I think, is it called biosafety cabinet?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and there's different types of them too. So there's extra types of ways to flow the air to keep the sample safe and you safe.
Yeah, I'm only asking because there's actually a company in Maine called the Baker Company, and they make those and then they send them all over the world, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to mold, how many different types of mold are there? I see that in the chat. I see it in my list too. And also, how many or what types of mold do you grow in the lab?
So I work with environmental samples. So that means whatever's in the air, whatever's in wherever they're collecting, I try to grow it or I try to find it to the best of my ability. So there isn't really a known type. It's a lot easier for when you're studying mold in the body. That's called clinical mycology. So if someone gets an infection, they grow it then, and there's only a certain types of molds that can grow in a human body. So mine is kind of, whatever happens to be there, I do my best to identify it and grow it. And that's kind of why my reality is knowing the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of molds. And they're not even all identified. There's only like a sliver of them identified in the world because there's just so many of them. It's really fascinating, which is why I love it so much, because you literally never know what you're going to get.
Great, thank you. I don't want to miss any here. So can mold grow in your lungs?
It can. It's called aspergillosis, is the most common one that will happen. Common meaning it's a very rare case that it'll grow in your lungs. It's usually people who have what's called an immunocompromised system. So their body can't fight off what it usually can in those situations. So sometimes people will breathe it in and it may start growing in their lungs, but this is like super rare. It really doesn't happen that often. It's usually those who are sick, really sick, not your average cold sick. It's very sick. And in those cases, they just can't fight off the normal things your body would in the average day. So it can grow sometimes in your lungs, or, athlete foot, gross things you might see on people's toes if they step on, really icky things. So it can grow on our bodies. It's just very rare. It doesn't happen too often.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can mold grow in height? If so, how tall can mold grow?
They can grow tall outdoors, and not in our homes, really. That's just not a, very wet forest. So you can get some tall ones there. I would say it's more span, length. It's actually, so you think of whales as being the largest living organism, but they're actually not. It's fungi, technically. So there's actually one fungus. It's one big ring. So think of a giant fairy ring that spans hundreds of miles, and it's one. So it's actually like the biggest ring of them all. So it's not mostly height, it's mostly like ground, because they live underground. So it's like basically just think it's only tree roots. And then sometimes it'll make the mushroom cap come up. But that's basically, yeah. So it's more a span of distance.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I still have one question here that I thought was really cool. So you said that some mold can make you really sick, but is there mold that can be beneficial for your health?
Beneficial, I would say there's some cultures that have things like that. I would say more often than not, what scientists will do and doctors will do is they'll harness certain pieces within a certain type of mold, rather than, injecting yourself with a mold at a doctor's office. They'll usually make a serum or something like that, or a drug or a pill that you'll take that comes from mold. So like penicillin is a really common drug, and that actually comes from the mold Penicillium. So it was actually discovered on accident. The scientist failed his experiment, and so he threw away his little plate, and all of a sudden it grew penicillium, and he went, "What the heck happened here?" And that was how he accidentally discovered that type of drug. So it's mostly used to make different things. So you grab different pieces of it rather than, injecting yourself with a full colony. But it's certainly beneficial in terms of food. A lot of people will harvest mushrooms in the forest.
Yeah, you mentioned some cultures believe, certain mushrooms even have health, positive health effects, like in Chinese culture. So that's pretty cool. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the hardest part of your job, or maybe swaying away from mold for a minute here?
Yeah, I would probably say it's like two things, for the science side of things. It's sometimes you run across something you've never seen before. And it takes a long time. We actually have a whole bunch of books that we're supposed to use, to go through and try to figure out, okay, what is it? And sometimes it takes me a really long time, a lot of studying, a lot of research to just figure out one thing, out of the 10 other things that were in the sample. So sometimes that's difficult. But the other difficult thing is, I'm dealing with a lot of homeowners, and a lot of the cases, it's a pretty easy fix, put a dehumidifier in their basement to reduce the moisture, clean up the spill that happened, the pipe that burst. But sometimes it's really hard to figure out where that water component came from. And that's usually when they need to use a certified home inspector or what's called an industrial hygienist to try to help them figure out. And so that can be really tough because you're trying to help someone and make their homes, clean and dry. And sometimes that's not very straightforward. So it's both the biology but also learning how buildings work. And sometimes it can be a little tricky.
Okay, so you talked about homeowners and mold potentially growing in your house. So someone here asked, is mold bad for you if you inhale it on a daily basis, and what would happen to you?
So it's up to the person. There's some people who I have where the husband feels something, but then the wife doesn't at all. And they've been living there, for 10 years. And she's always just had like a stuffy nose, so she could always smell this musty odor, but, the other person can't. And that happens all the time. It's really up to the human body for how sensitive they are to certain things. And so that's kind of why sometimes, one person might have a symptom in the house. They can still live in it as long as they're not having symptoms. But at the end of the day, you don't want mold growing in your homes, because what it's trying to do is do what it does in the forest. It's trying to break down, the trees that fell over. It's trying to break down material. And so that's what it's trying to do in your home. So even if you're not feeling symptoms, you should really clean it up and fix it, because ultimately it's breaking down your house. You don't want your house to fall down because you let the mold just live, as beautiful as it is, you don't want it there.
Right. Okay. What is the most common type of mold?
Probably this guy is pretty common, Aspergillus / penicillium group. So basically, scientists have said this like round, small little guy, he can be round and small, and he's really hard to see. And so they've kind of made a collective group of Aspergillus and penicillium, and then they put -- because they're just round and small. And so sometimes you can't see it. So often you'll see when I do mold reports, there'll often be a lot of these guys that fall into this group. But he also really loves paper on sheetrock. He loves, attics and things like that. So he tends to be pretty common indoors. So I would say Aspergillus and penicillium -- all kind of fall into this group. And I'd say they're pretty common to grow indoors.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned paper and drywall, and someone asked, where is mold most commonly found? And I'm also going to piggyback another question. And that other question is, what is the weirdest thing you've seen mold grow on?
I would say most commonly people have it in their bathrooms. Those are very humid environments, so it's got a lot of water in it. So I would say most commonly find it in people's bathrooms or in their basements. That's another area that has a lot of humidity, so it grows down there. The weirdest place, it's a great question, because I've seen it in a lot of weird places. It's always surprising when it grows on concrete, because concrete isn't an organic material that it's trying to eat, but what it's really trying to eat is the dust that's on it. Dust is made from skin cells, it's made from hair, all of this organic material. So it's trying to eat that. And so sometimes it's surprising when you're in a concrete basement and it's growing all on the wall, but it's actually just growing on the dust.
Hmm. Here is an interesting apocalyptical question. Have you ever had a mold sample spread all over the lab?
Thankfully. Well, okay. So in the box, so what you do is you take a piece of tape and you put it on the little colony, the mold colony that grew on the plate. That way we can take it onto our microscope and take a look at it to identify it. So there are certain types of mold that like to go poof when you touch them. That's their mode of transportation. So kind of like those big round mushroom balls you sometimes see on your front yard, and you step on it and it goes poof. It can do that in the lab sometimes. And so I've certainly had one that went poof, and it went all over inside of the box. All the spores were just everywhere. It made a mess. It took me a while to clean it up, but it was fun. It's kind of cool and exciting. So I was okay with cleaning it up afterwards because it was fun. Thankfully, it was in the box, so.
Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. One question here is mold, or can it be cancerous?
Not that I know of, though cancer comes from a lot of things. So I'd like to say no, but it's always surprising,
Mhm.
when it comes to cancer. I would say no, just because usually it does things like infections, if it was to do like worst case scenario kind of a things. So not to my knowledge.
Okay. Another one coming in the chat. How do you clean up the mold when it goes everywhere?
So in the lab, we use a certain type of alcohol mixture. So what it does is it'll try to kill off anything that it touches or deactivate it at least. So we spray it down wet and then use a paper towel to wipe it up. And when people clean it up in their homes, they kind of do a similar manner. You use just soap and water to wash it away with a cloth, because basically you're just trying to remove what's on the surface. It's kind of the same thing.
Mhm. Okay. How long does it take for mold to grow typically?
So it starts growing after 1 day. So that's kind of why if you have a spill or something like that, you want to clean it up right then and there, because it's going to start growing. If you let it sit overnight, it's going to start growing. But in terms of in my lab, when you grow it to get it to fully mature, so start to create these spores, which is what I look at under the microscope, it takes 5 to 7 days in order for it to grow. There's some that even they don't like to grow in the lab. They just need to be out into the world to grow. So sometimes it may take 14 days or not even at all. So it can range, but most of them 5 to 7 days to fully mature. So create these spores that I can identify.
Mhm. Great. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question that's not here, but if a middle schooler is interested in science and is thinking about pursuing a career in that maybe in the future, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
At least I would probably just try as many different things as you can. That's what I did. I talked to a lot of people who do different jobs. I job shadowed. I asked a lot of questions, and that's the sign of a good scientist, asking a lot of questions. So keep yourself curious. Try out a bunch of different things. And like in my case, I tried it all and I liked it all. So it's just whatever happened to fall in my lap, and I just loved it ever since. And you just don't know until you're slapped into it. So be open-minded, try new things, and ask lots of questions.
Okay, thank you so much. That's valuable advice. I see a comment in the chat. Thank you and enjoy your mold.
I will.
I'm also going to say thank you. I've certainly learned a lot about mold, and I hope all of our students today and teachers learned something too. Thank you so much for your time and for participating in the video today. This year, and thank you to all the schools that joined us today. Okay, we're gonna end here. So enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Yeah, have a good
Bye.
one.